Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'll be sharing ghost stories from Minnesota. Let's get into it. Story 1. Over the years, I've had many random ghostly occurrences, but what happened with my alarm clock has to be one of the strangest. I have a digital alarm clock / radio. A few years back, I removed the backup battery because it had gone dead. Since then, the clock has worked fine while plugged in. Until a couple weeks ago, when all of a sudden at 3:21 p.m. the clock alarm went off for one beep, then it stopped. Then it went off for about a half minute until I got up to go shut it off. It stopped when I got about a foot away from it. Then it went to the alarm set screen for about 20 seconds, then back to the clock. Normally the alarm going off wouldn't be strange, except that this clock has two alarms. Neither were set, and even if they were set, the last times they were set was 5 p.m. and 11 a.m. So there was no reason for it to go off at 3:21. The other weirdness about it is the clock going to the alarm set screen. You have to press and hold the alarm set button for about 10 seconds to get to that screen. And when the alarm is set and goes off, it goes off for about 1 hour before shutting off, not only about 30 seconds. So I went upstairs to tell my dad about it because we have had some ghostly experiences before in our house, and in truth I was a bit freaked out, so I stayed up there for about 5 minutes. When I finally got the courage to go downstairs again, I checked the clock and it was on the normal time screen, but as soon as I started watching the clock, it went again to the alarm set screen again, and then back to normal time. So I watched the clock for about 10 minutes, nothing was happening. Finally I said, "If you're still here, make it go back to the alarm set screen." And within 30 seconds it went back to the alarm set screen. I have asked a few times since then, but since then it hasn't done anything unusual. At first I thought, well, maybe my clock is starting to go out, but seeing as this has not ever happened before, this hasn't happened since, then it seems like it could be a spirit, and the time chosen of 3:21 is my mom's birthday, and she recently died in August. So I'm hoping it is my mom's spirit coming and visiting me. My mom believed in spirits, and we were talking about it one day long before she passed away. I told her, if you ever can contact me from the other side, use the electronics, because knocking things over in a house this chaotic would go unnoticed. Looks like she might have remembered. Story 2. Here are 3 paranormal experiences that I've experienced in the past year. One day, while my little cousins were at my house, we went into the backyard to play. I was enjoying the fall colors when I heard a whisper. It either said, "I'm here," or "over here." It was a man's voice, probably about 20 to 40 years old. When I looked in the direction of the voice, there was nobody there. It most definitely wasn't my uncle's voice, and there were no other adult men there either. I could feel this apparition's voice on my ear. A few days later, I told my cousin Tate, other side of the family, about it. She said that one day when she was playing outside, she heard a man's voice similar to what I heard say, "No." Another sort of paranormal experience was when me and Tate were recording a YouTube video. We were doing one of those slime challenges where I was blindfolded and my cousin had to direct me to the ingredients. While I was pouring in one of the ingredients, I asked, "Is this enough?" and heard a reply, "Add more." That wasn't my cousin, though this voice was probably a younger girl's voice, probably the same age as my cousin. The weirdest part about it was that the voice came up on the video audio. The most recent paranormal experience I had was 2 nights ago. Me and my mom were laying in bed. We had all the windows open because it was very hot in our house. It was late at night, no wind, no rain, not even a breeze, and everything was super quiet when all of a sudden both my mother and I heard this jingling noise. It sounded either like someone's car keys or some bells. My cat started growling when we heard it, so we got up, went to the bathroom, and went back to bed after the jingling stopped. We were thinking maybe it was someone with their car keys, but there wasn't a single sound of doors opening, cars starting, or anything, and we would have heard it because it was so quiet outside. It was especially scary because my cat started growling. He never growls. The only reasonable scenario would be that it was someone's pet that my cat didn't like, but as I said earlier, we didn't hear any door open or close, so there wasn't anyone letting their pet outside. Plus, I didn't hear any footsteps or walking accompanied with the jingling. I came here to ask if the people know of any folklore or mythology that matches with jingling noises, or if anyone else has had similar experiences. The only thing I could find about spirits and ringing sounds was that in different religions, people used bells to get rid of evil. If you know what the heck it was, please let me know. Story 3. I've experienced many unexplainable things, but this is one that has stayed with me. In a scenic Minnesota city, near where I went to college, there is a theater that is storied to be haunted by a mischievous ghost. This ghost, or the Blue Man, was known to move props, mess with curtains, and turn the stage lights on and off during performances. Stage managers would talk about things going wrong in the booth, and then suddenly fixing themselves. Actors would talk about weird feelings or shadows backstage, and several people that I knew had reported to have seen a man in blue coveralls, shaggy light hair, and 70s style glasses around the theater. The theater was attached to an old train depot, so it stands to reason that the ghost was a worker or engineer, but I do not know that to have ever been confirmed. Being an actor and a paranormal believer, I loved hearing stories of this supposedly haunted theater. No one ever felt threatened or that anything evil was there. If anything, stage managers and crew would be annoyed because inevitably, during every production, something would be amiss. I only worked there twice, both times in musicals. The first show, I played a lead and would come in early years and was often the last person to be dismissed from rehearsal. I tend to be pretty sensitive to paranormal things and was aware of that feeling of being watched or that uneasy feeling of not being alone but not being able to place why. I was pretty consumed with rehearsals though, and didn't spend time thinking about ghosts or the Blue Man until he came to rehearsal one night. To paint a better picture of the theater itself, it's a proscenium stage, one of those big places with fly space and wing space. A stage about 3 feet from the floor where the audience sits. The house itself has few hundred seats, all in a slight semicircle facing the stage. The lighting booth was dead center in the back. It's important to note that there are center aisles. Audiences would enter from the lobby through the double doors and then could go left or right through a swinging door that was propped open before the show and at intermission, but then closed during the performance by ushers, and would have get their seats from either of the 2 aisles. This means that if your seat was in the middle, you had quite a number of seats to walk by to get there. Each row had between 20 or 30 seats or so. The 2 swinging doors at the exits were very heavy and would bang loudly if you didn't catch them or close them carefully. To minimize disturbance and interruptions during rehearsals, the stage left door was always bolted shut. So basically the only way into the theater from the audience was the door on the stage right. The only door into the lighting booth was also on stage right. Alright, so one night, per the norm, I was the only actor left and was working on stage with the director and assistant director. Everyone else had left either through the back door, loading dock, or through the stage right door to the lobby. We had been working for a good 45 minutes and were the only 3 people left in the building. I was standing on stage, toward the edge of the stage. The director and AD were on the floor in the audience in front of me, comparing notes in a script that was lying on the edge of the stage. We were all leaning over it. The 2 of them were discussing something, and I suddenly got this overwhelming feeling that I was being watched. I looked up, and there he was. In the very back row, far left corner of the audience, was a man with shaggy hair and 70s style glasses. It looked like he was wearing a gray button down to me, and I only saw him from mid-chest up, like he was either sitting in that corner seat or standing behind it. I did a bit of a double take because I wasn't expecting anyone else to be there and hadn't seen or heard anyone come in. I was on stage and had been performing straight out to the audience and would have seen if anyone came in. I thought, oh, it must be a janitor or the parent of one of the kids in the show, so I went back to looking at the script. The director and AD didn't seem to notice him and were still talking, so I straightened up and looked back at the guy in the back of the house. We had eye contact. He was looking right at me. I smiled at him and did a little half wave at him. He didn't respond, but kept looking at me. I looked down at the script and in a split second thought, wait, no one else is here, and immediately looked up again, and he was gone. I was stunned, literally frozen, staring at where he had been. It was only then that I remembered the description of the blue man and thought, oh my God, that must have been him. The director and AD asked me something and brought my attention back to them. I asked if everyone else had gone, and they said yes, and that we had to exit out of the back because the janitor had locked everything in the front when he left 45 minutes earlier. Neither of them saw anyone else or seemed to feel anything or to even notice that I was a bit shook up. We packed up our stuff, and I watched as the AD walked to the stage left door in the audience and pulled on it. It was locked. He walked all the way across the back row of seats to the stage right door, pulled on it to make sure it was locked, and then we turned off the light, exited through the loading dock together. When I got to my car, my heart started racing faster as I tried to reasonably explain what I had seen. It could have been a janitor. It didn't look like the janitor, but it could have been one I hadn't met yet. But if it was, I would have seen him leave. I had looked away from him for no more than a second, and the man was gone. How could he have gotten out? The only door that was open during rehearsals was stage right, and I would have seen him walking across the back row, just like the AD had done to go check the doors. He could not have gone into the lighting booth because that entrance was also on the right. If he had keys, he would have had to either unlock it before he left or lock it after he left, and that would have taken time, and all three of us would have heard that deadbolt turn. He would have had to stand and open that swinging door, which I would have seen, and if he left in a hurry, he would have had to let the door close on its own, or I would have seen it closed, but there was no loud door slam. The more I thought, the more convinced I was that I had seen the blue man. My first time seeing an apparition, it was kind of a big deal, but then I started to worry. He liked to mess around with things like curtains and cables and lights in the wing space and fly space during shows. This particular show involved actual flying with cables and harnesses. I was suddenly worried that one of his pranks could affect the rigging and someone, like me or children, could get hurt. The next night I got to rehearsal early. No one else was on the stage. The ghost light was still there, and I walked down stage center to where I had been standing when I saw him. I felt like someone was watching me, and my chest felt tight, and I was excited and nervous as I looked out into the house, all around the stage and up in the rafters. I said something to the effect of, hello, and I said my name, and I'm playing, and I said the role I was playing. Thank you for coming to rehearsal last night. It's nice to meet you. We're all very excited for the show, but I'm really nervous about flying and all the harnesses and cables. Would you mind keeping an eye on us and keeping us safe? And then I thanked him again for coming to rehearsals and for sharing the space with us. I didn't see him again after that. I sometimes felt things backstage, but for the most part, paranormally speaking, things were quiet the rest of the rehearsals. People even commented on how they hadn't seen or heard from the blue man yet. We got through all the rehearsals and all the performances without a single problem with props or lights or sound or cables. Well, that couldn't be obviously explained by human error. At the cast party, the stage manager and I were talking, and she said it was the first show she had ever done where the blue man didn't do anything, and she had been doing shows there for years. When I told her about what I experienced, she smiled and nodded her head and said, well, must have made a friend. I don't know if that's true, but I'm very glad to have had that interaction. I think because I said hello that first night and asked him nicely to keep us safe, that we had some kind of understanding, at least for that show. The very next musical I was also in. I didn't see him or even feel his presence during rehearsals, but then one night during the first huge company number, the stage lights suddenly all went out. The actors and musicians kept going, and a minute or so later the lights all suddenly came back on. The show must go on, and no one missed a beat, but at intermission I found the stage manager, who was in the booth controlling the lights, and asked her what happened. She sort of laughed and said, I guess he's back at it. Story 4. Shortly after turning in for the night, dog sleeping by the nightstand, I go through my email and check my online buying and selling sales. While doing so, the increased depth and volume of breathing from the dog got my attention. It was unusual, but I continued my business. A few minutes later, again, I heard the breathing. It was getting louder, or closer, or both. Now it has my undivided attention. Why? Because I was hearing 3 breathing. Me, the dog, and something else. The room is dark except for the light of my phone. The 3rd breathing I hear is at the foot of my bed. It's a normal breathing rate, not heavy, not deep. I look to the nightstand and my dog is sound asleep. Now I ask myself if I'm dreaming or if this is really happening, so I pinch, slap, and punch myself. I'm not dreaming. So I hold my breath and count the numbers breathing again. I hear 2. There should only be the dog breathing. I do it a 2nd time with the same results. All the while, whatever this is, it's going around the side of the bed, moving up the side, getting closer. I look to the nightstand again to be sure it's not the dog. He's still sleeping. Again, I pinch, slap, and punch myself. It's not a dream. Now I start talking to this anomaly or entity, whatever it is, under my breath. I tell it to shut up. The breathing continues. Talking to something you can't see or feel, yet sounds like a person. Under my breath, I tell it to shut up again. It continues. Try to imagine it. Now it is standing at the side of my bed. I reach to feel if something is there. Nothing. I can't see it or feel it. My mind is racing. I tell it to shut up. Speaking louder, I'm asking myself, what more can I do? I repeat, speaking even louder. Shut up. Still nothing. Now the breathing is 12 inches from my ear. I can't see or feel it. Now I tell it to shut up the last time, this time adding profanity. Well, it finally stopped. What was it? Well, prior to this, there were things happening, such things as doors closing, faucets turning on, cameras being bumped during filming, and an astronomical number of orbs in the living room, most coming out or going into the fireplace flue. Some have said the townhouse to be a portal. The most interesting are 5 phenomenons. 1, my granddaughter communicated with the spirit of a little girl. 2, my ex-wife's grandmother was trying to communicate with me. 3, the central air was turned off on one of the hottest summer days. 4, the dog was growling and barking at something I couldn't see. And 5, a black mass that I saw. I don't know whose or what spirit was next to me that night, or what would have happened if I hadn't told it to shut up. Nothing happened after that I'm aware of. I do know it was a phenomenal experience. I had incidents at the apartment I just moved out of too. That's a whole different story. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.